Welcome to the final team selection of Euro 2024. As you approach match day 7, there's only 2 teams to choose from in the Euros final between Spain and England. I'll be discussing the optimal team structure. Some of you might be looking for balance, going for 6 players from one country and 5 from the other in your starting 11. Others will go all in on either England or Spain, and I'll be discussing my strategy in this team selection video and podcast. Smash the like button and subscribe for new if you enjoy the content. Let's get this to over 200 likes on YouTube, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals such as 26,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Ultimately, all 4 goalkeepers blanked in match day 6 in the semi-finals, so there's not really too much to comment on there. Jordan Pickford hasn't really delivered in the knockout stages so far, and England are usually quite solid defensively in the round of 16, quarterfinals and semi-finals, but we haven't seen that yet from England. They're conceding a goal in every single round, and to be fair, they were the better team compared to the Netherlands, and it was a stunner by Xavi Simons to give the Dutch the lead very early on in that game. England responded well, but Jordan Pickford hasn't been a good Euro fantasy asset, and it's arguable that Unai Simon is a better goalkeeper for match day 7. My defence is usually solid, but that wasn't the case in the semi-finals as Jules Koundé blanked. He got 3 points, and at one stage they gave him an own goal, so he lost an extra 2 points from that. And Dani Olmo didn't get the goal, but ultimately they did reverse that decision. They gave Dani Olmo the credit, and Jules Koundé didn't lose 2 points, which is a good thing. He got some ball recoveries to make up for the 2 goals conceded, but it wasn't enough to get a good score there for the Frenchman. He has been the best defender in Euro Fantasy in this campaign, and it's a shame he won't be in the final, but France ultimately didn't deserve it. Their attacking play just wasn't really on it. They created chances, but they were blunt in front of goal. The final decision making, whether it was the pass or maybe the finish, was just not on it. But France had the best defense going into the semi-finals, yet Spain found a way to score 2 goals and reach the Euro 2024 final. My second defender was Marc Guéhi, who just returned from suspension, and he only got 3 points as well. He got a few ball recoveries, but nowhere near to the same level as we've seen in earlier rounds of this competition, which was quite surprising, but it does get tougher as you get into the semi-finals and the final itself. But ball recoveries is still a massive part of this game, and I expect Marc Guéhi to get a decent return in match day 7. The last 2 defenders were Aymeric Laporte, who got 4 points overall, and he was a differential for me, and I'm very happy with his performance. Even though it was only 4 points, it was the most of anyone in my defensive line, and I think he's a good player to have. The same goes for De Vrij, who rounded off his campaign with 3 points with plenty of ball recoveries, and I bought him back in match day 5 when he scored and won player of the match against Turkey, so he was a good signing overall, and all 4 of these defenders had a great Euro 2024 campaign. It's a shame that some of them are now out. It has been tough to get midfielder returns in this game. Bukayo Saka only got a 1-pointer after being booked against the Netherlands, and the same goes for a fellow Englishman in Jude Bellingham. Both of them got the yellow card, and they did nothing in terms of goals or assists. Saka scored, but Kyle Walker was offside in the build-up. He was the one who provided the pass to Saka in the end, and that's now twice in this tournament where Saka scores a goal, but the assister is in an offside position, which is a bit frustrating for Saka owners. And as for Jude Bellingham, he's had a poor tournament overall, but he has come up with clutch moments, and I wouldn't be surprised if he scores the winner for England on Sunday. I think he's that type of player. If you were to captain an English player, as we'll talk about very soon, Jude Bellingham is probably one of the top options on my list, but I think Spain will be the favourites going into this game based on overall performance, but sometimes the best team doesn't win the competition. And for me, one of the best players in this tournament has been Dani Olmo, who scored the second goal against France to make the comeback. He got 7 points overall, and I'll talk about it very soon, but he was my captain on the first day, and some of you may have switched to a Harry Kane, Marc Guéhi or Cody Gakpo, and some results were quite decent, others not so much. But at this stage of the tournament, and even in the round of 16, I think one return is enough to stick with the captaincy. The match between France and Spain summed up Mbappe's tournament. He had some good moments, but ultimately he was ineffective in the final third with only 1 goal, 1 assist, and he forced an own goal back in matchday 1 against Austria. And he admitted in a post-match interview that he had a very poor tournament overall, and it is a shame. Many of us expected him to win the Golden Boot, or be in contention at least, and to push France all the way to the Euros final, as France could have been on the positive side of the draw, but in the end, finishing second cost them because they faced Spain in the semi-finals and they never got going from the beginning of Euro 2024. Next up though is Harry Kane, who's also played very poorly, and in fact I would argue Kane's performances have been worse than Mbappe's, but he has scored goals. That's 3 now for the tournament, the joint top scorer with Dani Olmo, but the tiebreaker for the Golden Boot is the assist. So Dani Olmo is the leader of the Golden Boot. Let's see if one of them can end up winning it in the Euros final. And Kane won that penalty against the Netherlands, which was very contentious in my opinion. It was never a penalty, but Harry Kane won it, and he's got a history of winning these sorts of penalties for both club and country. So he got 2 points for winning it, and he also tucked it away. There's that Captain Harry Kane, fair play. I had a feeling he would deliver in the semi-finals, but I personally didn't want to risk changing the captaincy, because for me, even one return and getting 5 or 6 points from your player is enough to stick in most scenarios. But the third and final player was very disappointing in the last 2 rounds, and that's Cody Gakpo. One of my regrets is not going for Lamine Yamal, maybe over Cody Gakpo. That would have been the ideal scenario, but I think Gakpo had a great tournament overall, particularly in the group stages and the round of 16, and it might be similar to what he did back in the World Cup, where he had a great start and then died down as we got to the more important games. That might be a trend for Cody Gakpo, who knows? Maybe in the next tournament he will deliver and grow from this, but he is a good player, especially on the left wing, and he was the Netherlands' best player in the front line. I stuck with Dani Olmo as my captain. He delivered 7 points as a baseline score and 14 points overall, and I got 46 points using the wildcard chip. I'm close to the 400 point mark for the Euros tournament, and my rank has gone up yet again to 4,472 in the world. But not going for Xavi Simons did hurt a little bit. He scored that thunderbolt against England, and I also didn't go for Yamal. Going for those 2 players would have been a game changer, and I'd probably be close to 1k, if not in the top 1k, as I did in UCL Fantasy this season, and it would be great if I could somehow get into that sort of rank by the end of the tournament. But I would need some differentials to deliver for me in the Euros final. There is no third place playoff as we see in Copa America or the World Cup, which would have also boosted the chances of gaining rank at this stage, but it's still possible to get those rank rises and deliver those green arrows. So let me now talk about my Matchday 7 team selection. I've got 5 free transfers, we all do in fact, and it's very easy to build a starting 11. You can't make substitutions or change the captaincy, so your substitutes are completely irrelevant. It's all about those starting by the time the deadline passes and the Euros final begins. I have Unai Simon and Pickford after I built my Matchday 6 wildcard team, and my current preference is to start Unai Simon, and it really depends on which team you think is going to win the Euros final. So if you believe England will win, I'd recommend going for Jordan Pickford and stacking up on the English defence, but my current preference is to go for Unai Simon and also stack up on Spanish defenders. Despite this, I'd highly recommend going for Marc Guéhi in your starting 11. Even if you're back in Spain to win the Euros or to keep a clean sheet, I'd recommend going for one English player in the defence, midfield and forward line, and you can still go for 7 or 8 Spaniards, but you can also do the opposite if you're backing England to lift the trophy and go for one Spanish player in each position. That would be my recommendation when building the optimal team structure for the Euros final, and Marc Guéhi is the best defender left in this competition, so even if his chances of getting a clean sheet or getting points are lower on paper than the Spaniards, I still think with ball recoveries he can get you 3 or 4 points at the bare minimum. Next up though was the player of the match in the Champions League final, and that's Dani Carvajal, who is now back from suspension after being sent off against Germany, and he would have missed the semi-finals anyway because of yellow cards. And I think Dani Carvajal is the most likely to get a goal or an assist amongst all of these defenders, and he's also the most likely to win player of the match. I don't think that'll be the case this time round, but in terms of likelihood and probabilities, he is the most likely compared to all the other players in this position. Next up is a ball recovery machine in Aymeric Laporte, who has really stepped up in the knockout stages. I think it was a bit shakier against France, but his performance against Germany was colossal, and if he can perform like that in the final, then Spain have a great chance of keeping a clean sheet despite facing some very top attackers like Saka, Foden, Bellingham and Harry Kane. But Aymeric Laporte has good distribution. He can be a bit suspect in the air at times, but in this tournament, I think he's been good so far. And in terms of ball recoveries, only Marc Guéhi is better amongst the defenders left in this competition. The fourth and final defender, though, is Cucurella, who you could argue is better than Laporte, even in ball recoveries. And he is cheaper, but budget isn't going to be an issue for anybody watching, and in certain cases you could have 7 or 8 million left in the bank if you go for ball recoveries in the midfield like Declan Rice instead of Bukayo Saka, and that'll be a big talking point as we move on to the next position. And I'm going to go for a 4-4-2 and go for these four midfielders from Spain and England. I'm going for more balance in the midfield, starting with Saka, who has won the Player of the Year award for England in consecutive years, and in the last three tournaments, so the Euros back in 2021, the last World Cup, and this tournament, I would argue Saka has been in the top three players of all three competitions. He is just so consistent for the English national team, more so than Bellingham and Foden, but in terms of the most likely to score or assist and to have an impact in the final, I think that's Jude Bellingham from the English side of things, and he also is going to be very motivated to win the Ballon d'Or. And if England were to win this competition, I think Jude Bellingham is going to win it, and there's nothing more really that we can say or do about it. Bellingham hasn't really performed that great in this tournament, but he comes up with clutch moments like against Serbia and Slovakia, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did it yet again. So if you were to go for one English midfielder, Jude Bellingham would be my recommendation, but I think Saka is the one who has performed better, and he's generally more consistent for England over the last couple of years. But we've got two midfielder slots left. I'm going for two Spaniards, and Dani Olmo is arguably the best midfielder left in the game. He has been very consistent in terms of goals and assists throughout this tournament, particularly in the knockout stages where he's delivering in every single round against Georgia, Germany, France, and let's see if he can do it against England. The fourth and final midfielder, though, is Nico Williams, and there are some big absentees here. I think Declan Rice for ball recoveries is a miss, and also the likes of Rodri, who is very likely to win player of the match. If Spain were to win this game, I think Rodri would be pivotal. He also has that trademark finish from outside the box, driving that shot in to the bottom corner, and he's done it for Manchester City in the past, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did it for Spain here as well. So Rodri is also another one, and Fabian Ruiz, who's the joint highest scoring midfielder alongside Dani Olmo with 34 points. From my perspective, the two forwards are just non-negotiables. You have to go for them. Harry Kane is the joint top scorer of this tournament despite playing poorly overall. He's got 3 goals, he's a great penalty taker, and he's the most likely to score from the English national team, even over Jude Bellingham. And next up is a 16-year-old sensation. He'll turn 17 on Saturday, but Yamal has had a great Euro campaign with 3 assists and also a great goal against France to silence the critics like Adrien Rabiot. I don't know what he was thinking by saying those comments before the game and beefing a 16-year-old, but Yamal responded in the best way possible on the pitch, and he's got a great chance of winning the Player of the Tournament award, let alone the Young Player of the Tournament, which he's probably got in the bag already. But I think the Spanish attackers are very exciting. In terms of goals and assists, they might not be as consistent as the likes of Bellingham, Kane, and maybe Foden and Saka at club level, but in this Euros tournament, you have to say they've really delivered and pushed Spain all the way into a final. Their inexperience might cost them in the end, particularly in the forward positions, but Spain have some experienced players like Carvajal, Laporte and Rodri who could also kind of steady the ship and guide them towards victory. But in terms of the optimal team structure, I think going for something like this, if you're backing a Spanish victory, and if you are going for the English to win, then go for Pickford in goal, one of Walker or Stones at the very least, perhaps even both, to replace Laporte and Cucurella, Declan Rice in the midfield, and go for 7 English players in your starting 11. And I don't even mind a balance of 6 and 5 because it could be a draw and it goes all the way to extra time and penalties. And if that's the case, you might even want to stack up on 5 defenders or go for ball recoverers in the midfield like Rodri and Declan Rice. But let's now talk about the captaincy and my bench. I have been asked many questions about substitutions and the starting lineup. It's all about those in your 11, and those players will contribute towards your final score. And the only way substitutions can work is if you go for a player in your starting 11 who doesn't feature whatsoever in the Euros final, then an automatic substitution will take place. But you can't make manual subs. That is very important to know. I've been saying it from the beginning of this tournament. UCL Fantasy and Euro Fantasy are identical, and if you played the Champions League this season, you would have found out that you can't make substitutions for the Champions League final, and you also can't change the captaincy. You need different days within the match day to make it possible. If we had a third place playoff, then we would have been able to utilize our 50-man squad like we did in World Cup Fantasy, but that isn't the case here, so you can't make substitutions. I have to make that very clear. I can go for a 14-man squad though with my 5 transfers. Gakpo is my only eliminated player. I've got Pickford, Stones and Fabian Ruiz on my bench, and any single one of them could come into my final team, to be fair. The same goes for Rodri or Declan Rice, who are very good players in the midfield for several reasons. With Rice, it's mainly because of ball recoveries, and with Rodri, player of the match award potential, ball recoveries, and the odd goal that he scores, particularly at clutch moments. But in terms of the captaincy, I'm looking to go for Dani Olmo or Yamal. They're my top 2 picks at the moment. I'm backing Spain to win, but if you're backing an English victory, then Harry Kane or Jude Bellingham would be my suggestions for the Englishmen who believe that football is coming home. I don't think I'd captain a defender, although I'm kind of sensing a 1 or 2-0 victory for Spain at the moment, so that could also work out. Captaining Carvajal, maybe Laporte or Cucurella could be decent, but my preference right now is with the midfielders and forwards, and it's between Dani Olmo, Yamal, Kane and Bellingham in terms of the best captains for Matchday 7. The transfers that are locked in for me are a Spanish defender, so either Carvajal or Cucurella, perhaps even both, and Yamal is certainly going to come into my final team, but I could also decide to go for Rodri and Declan Rice instead of using my 5th transfer on De Vrij to another defender like John Stones or Walker, like I showed you in my 15-man squad previously. But Mark Gay, Laporte, Bellingham, Williams, Olmo are already in my team. The same goes for Kane and the 2 goalkeepers, so I've got some flexibility there, and it's not that important about having 15 players in your squad overall, so I will have 1 eliminated player at the very least. And in this scenario that you can see on screen, I've got De Vrij and Gakpo because it could mean selling Saka to Declan Rice and going for the ball recovery potential instead of backing Saka to get a goal or assist in the Euros final. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What would you do in my situation with the 5 free transfers? What are you going to be doing? And if you are using the wildcard or limitless, check out that video on podcast. I roll both chips into one because you're going to have a lot of money left in the bank even if you play the limitless chip, because we don't have that many expensive players left in Euro Fantasy. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 26,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, Euro Fantasy League, Draft Town, and also Spotify. Follow me on that platform and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Match Day 7 and also the new season in FPL.